On this channel, I tend to focus quite a bit on themed entertainment. Obviously, my focus is on different attractions and the theming of various theme park lands. However, a theme park definitely has to make money through other means and not just through admission tickets. We of course know that when you visit a park, you're likely going to spend money on overpriced food and merchandise. Perhaps you'll even consider one of the many upcharge experiences. But why purchase overpriced food? Sure, you could bring your own, but there's something about the experience of grabbing a meal in a themed venue that just makes it a little bit more fun. The food quality is often just the equivalent to cafeteria food, but if the space is fun and enveloping, you're likely to spend more money and not really mind doing so. Take for example T-Rex restaurant at Disney Springs. I've never eaten here myself, but I've heard pretty negative things about the food quality. I recently just wandered in to film the place, and I found myself completely surprised by how well themed and fun it is. Does anything in here really make sense? Well, no, but that doesn't really matter. I don't care if there's a woolly mammoth standing 10 feet away from a T-Rex. Ironically, the food is not the draw so much as the atmosphere. I think then that this illustrates a point. Your restaurant can be a themed destination in and of itself, and likely leads to larger sales, even if the food isn't great. That begs the question though, does this apply to retail? Does the theming of a shop really matter when people are coming specifically to purchase souvenirs? Well, it appears that Disney has evolved its merchandise beyond just knickknacks for vacationing tourists. The reason I was prompted to ask these questions is because Disney has just opened the new Creation Shop in the middle of Epcot, and as you can see, it's not themed at all. It's a very clean and corporate space meant to showcase the merchandise and indicates a different direction that the company is taking away from themed retail. So, today, let's talk about the Creation Shop and see how it stands up to other merchandise locations and what this means for the future. I think a lot of people clicked on this video because they expected me to have a lot of negative things to say about the Creation Shop. Before it opened, I was a bit cynical because I knew that it would follow the trend that led to the overhaul of World of Disney. But surprisingly, I think the space, along with the new Club Cool that just opened alongside it, is pleasant and airy. It's a lot of big windows that let in a lot of light and allows the location to feel bright and spacious. So, why is theme park retail moving away from theming and more towards generic mall store? Well, if you recall the old World of Disney stores, they very much reflected a 90s aesthetic in themed entertainment. The color palettes of each rooms were very in your face, and the overall Disney theming was meant almost as a sensory overload. This place just screams late 90s or early noughties, and while outdated by today's standard of retail, I think that this aesthetic was a large part of its charm. The old World of Disney store wasn't just a place to sell merchandise, but was a destination in and of itself. It drew you in with its over-the-top elements, and that's how they made a lot of their sales. However, with the overhaul of these stores, we've seen the theming go to the wayside in favor of more directly presenting the product to Disney consumers. But why is the new store designed in this way, and why does it continue to make massive profit? Well, I've often seen it compared to the Apple Store, and I agree that's exactly what it's trying to emulate. The idea behind the sleek and open design of these stores was less a retail space and more a consumer experience that showcased the technology of Apple. The store element itself was minimal, meant to showcase the Apple product and how it would positively affect your life. That's the idea, at least. However, what a lot of retailers took away from the Apple Store was the minimalist design, showcasing the product in a way that consumers could more directly see it. You only need to visit the other stores at Disney Springs to see this new aesthetic trend. Does this entice more sales? Well, I don't really know, but the spaces do feel nice, and this is likely the future of retail for now. Applying this to the world of Disney, we see the bright, minimalist space that puts the product directly into view of the shoppers. I also think it's interesting how each section is clearly labeled. Want home goods? Here's a big home sign. Want hats or ears? Again, pretty straightforward. The overall design of the store is an indicator that the popularity of the Disney product takes precedence over the actual retail experience itself. Unlike with the Apple Store, it's not doing anything to show how the Disney product affects your life, and unlike the old world of Disney, the store itself isn't a destination. So, what changed about the Disney product, and why does it allow the store to be so successful? Let's go back to the Creation Shop for a bit. Like the world of Disney, the purpose of the store is to eliminate the theming and to put the product first. I know that some people in the comments will probably insist that the theming is Mickey Mouse, because that's what Disney also insists is the theme, but no, it's not actually themed. Simply put, this weird artwork of Mickey is not a theme. The space itself is aesthetically pleasing, but again, not themed. Why does the store exist though? Why doesn't it draw people in with the promise of unique Epcot merchandise or a themed experience inspired by Epcot itself? Well, a large factor in what allows Disney products to flourish is social media. I think that Disney products were probably going this way anyways, but the real turning point was with the rose gold ears, which were released in 2017, if I recall correctly. These became wildly popular, and demand far exceeded what Disney could manufacture. Jumping on this trend, Disney premiered Millennial Pink and soon after Potion Purple. But it wasn't just ears. Products such as spirit jerseys and other articles of clothing quickly became popular due to spread on social media. Disney tapped into a very specific market that not only advertised their products for free, but also allowed it to become a brand associated with suburban lifestyles. This isn't a criticism, but just an observation, and I've been fascinated on how Disney has entered this market. Disney still certainly sells its fair share of toys and tacky souvenirs for vacationers, but they've also gone beyond that and made a large part of the product a clothing brand in and of itself. I think that's a large part of why the world of Disney and the Creation Shop can afford to be minimalist spaces with no theming. Disney has created a social media market that drives sales independent of the actual Disney experience, and it's clearly popular as you can see by how homogenized the merchandise has become across all of Disney property. Disney even released, of all things, concept art for the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World. Concept art for merchandise instead of attractions? What a time we live in. This doesn't apply exclusively just to merchandise though. With the rise of Instagram, we've also seen a rise in Instagrammable food items. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, but just an observation. I'm personally a fan of the many different flavored specialty soft serve products that the Magic Kingdom tends to cycle through. However, I do have one major criticism that the influence social media has had on Disney parks, and that's pretty much the entirety of Avengers Campus at Disney California Adventure. I've done a longer video breaking down the shortcomings of that land, but one of my largest criticisms is how it focuses more on Instagrammable heroes rather than actual show content or quality. But I've already covered that, and this is just a small note. To get back on track, the popularity of Disney products through the influence of social media is what allows the Creation Shop to pass without any discernible theme. It's not that the shop wouldn't have been profitable, as people always want to purchase souvenirs, but instead of drawing people in with a theme, the outside demand for Disney products is what influenced the shop's design. Like the world of Disney, it's a lot of easily identifiable sections to get you to the merchandise as quickly as possible. Do I wish the Creation Shop actually had something to do with Epcot? Sure, but I'm a bit indifferent because the overall aesthetic is rather pleasing, and is definitely an improvement over the previous iteration called Mouse Gear. For whatever reason, a lot of people seem to be upset that Mouse Gear was torn out, but I've always personally kind of hated it. The shop itself existed just to sell generic Disney merchandise in the middle of Epcot, and the theme itself was so superficially related to the park that it's quite laughable. If anything, Creation Shop is just a less cluttered version of Mouse Gear, but without the atrocious theming. Before someone mentions it in the comments, let me just briefly bring up that the original retail space was called the Centaurium, and that a lot of people seem to remember the space with a lot of nostalgia that elevates it beyond what it actually was. Like Mouse Gear and now Creations, it's a pretty generic retail location that bears little relation to Epcot, other than Figment spinning around in a spaceship. Epcot retail in this space has never been great, and so the Creation Shop, with its focus on markets created through social media, is just adapting with the times. Again, I find Disney's pivot to this market rather fascinating because of how successfully they've done it. In 2015, Universal Studios Florida premiered its first Halloween Horror Nights tribute store. The idea behind the store was in the name, to pay tribute to the history of the event, but to also set up a temporary space with event-specific merchandise. The store itself was a draw just on its theming alone, and continued to become more elaborate over subsequent years. However, Universal decided to expand on this idea and incorporate other themes in as well. It has now included a tribute to the Mardi Gras event, Christmas, and the opening of the Jurassic World Velocicoaster. As with the Horror Nights stores, these other iterations also include heavily themed spaces intended to draw you in. Does this merchandise probably sell well outside of the shops? Sure, but I have to imagine that the continued investment into the space is a sign of profitability, no doubt because the stores are attractions in and of themselves. For example, you might find Velocicoaster merchandise appealing and might purchase it at the front of islands, but the tribute store also offered unique food items. The chocolate dino egg that features a random baby dino inside is an example of a fun novelty that I probably wouldn't have purchased unless it was dressed up in the theming of the store. The chocolate itself wasn't even really that good, but I made the purchase because it seemed like a fun novelty thing to do because the store was so interesting. What draws people into these stores isn't just the merchandise, but rather the atmosphere, and you can see how this lesson relates to other Disney retail spaces, such as the original World of Disney. Today though, we see that the merchandise ultimately takes precedence over the retail experience, and that the store is doing everything it can to make the product as visible as possible. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, and these new Disney retail spaces are inherently nice with their modern take on things, if not a bit generic. I'm not personally a fan because Disney merchandise has become increasingly homogenized, but it does obviously sell pretty well, and so the company would be stupid not to appeal to consumer demand. However, let me ask my viewers this. Would the Creation Shop benefit from being a highly themed experience that ties into the overall themes of futurism and the humanities that Epcot offers? It's difficult to envision what something like this might even look like because it has the risk of quickly dating itself, just as Mouse Gear and Centaurium did. Perhaps a shop dedicated to the legacy of Epcot would work as well, paying homage to the park's past and celebrating its future. It's a difficult space to fill, but I'd ultimately be interested in knowing whether the location would benefit from immersive theming that ties into the rest of the park. Disney is certainly having no issues selling its merchandise, and so is a themed space even worth the effort? It's difficult to say, but I think it's definitely food for thought, and I'd be interested in knowing your view on things. If you have any good ideas for what could occupy the space where the Creation Shop exists, I'd be interested in reading those ideas down in the comments. As always, if you like this type of content, I highly recommend just quickly hitting the like button on the video and pushing the subscribe button with bell notification to be alerted when new videos are released.